The Solace emerged from jump space with a shudder, her hull humming as real space embraced her again. Elias Kale stood by the viewport, arms folded, eyes fixed on the spectacle ahead. The throne of stars hung against the backdrop of Varela Prime's swollen red sun. From a distance, the orbital capital looked almost delicate, a crown of golden spires and glassy rings, light glinting off a latticework of habitation towers. Up close, the scale became staggering, a continent's worth of steel and crystal, rotating slowly to the rhythm of its star. It was beautiful. And it was dangerous. Mara Vance, his aide, joined him at the glass. First time seeing it in person? Last time I was here, I was in the back of a delegation. Nobody noticed me. Elias's tone was flat. They'll notice this time. Her reflection met his in the glass, eyes sharp, expression guarded. The Council's leaning imperial. Even the Archons are hedging. They've been warned not to back us. Elias didn't answer. He'd expected this. The Empire's reach was subtle, woven into the very fabric of galactic politics. Docking clearance came without ceremony. The Solace glided into the bay like a grain of dust into the belly of a cathedral. Towering gates sealed shut, locking them into the Empire's domain. Delegations moved through the concourse in a river of color and motion, scaled, furred, feathered, and smooth-skinned species brushing past in an unspoken hierarchy. Humans were rare here, and Elias could feel eyes lingering on him. Some curious. Some openly dismissive. A familiar voice called out, accented but warm. Ambassador Kale. Elias turned to see Lior of the Archon Dominion, a tall, silver-eyed figure draped in blue silk. They clasped forearms briefly, a gesture neither entirely human nor entirely Archon. Lior. Elias allowed the faintest smile. I was hoping for a conversation before the session. Lior's gaze flicked over the crowded concourse. Walk with me. They moved toward a quieter balcony overlooking the docking bay. Starships glittered beyond the force field. I'll be plain, Lior began. If you accuse the Empire outright, the Dominion cannot stand with you. Because you think we're wrong, Elias said. Or because you're afraid? Because the Empire will destroy anyone who sides with you, Lior replied. They've already begun applying pressure. A pause. Kale, sometimes survival means silence. Elias's jaw tightened. Sometimes silence means surrender. Lior studied him for a long moment before inclining their head. Then I wish you luck. You'll need more than that. They turned and disappeared into the flow of dignitaries. The council chamber was an ocean of alien presence. Tiered platforms curved around a central well where speakers addressed the assembly. Holographic banners hung in shimmering arcs above each faction. The Varellan crest, a star crowned by flame, dominated the far wall. Conversations dimmed as a procession entered through the upper gates. High Chancellor Vera Quarren descended the steps, robes of iridescent silver flowing like liquid light. She moved with the precision of a predator, every gesture calculated to draw the chamber's gaze. Elias watched her take the central dais. Her voice, smooth and resonant, carried easily through the chamber's acoustic amplifiers. Honored delegates of the Galactic Concord, she began. It pleases the Empire to host yet another cycle of deliberations. We gather in pursuit of harmony and order, that all species may know their place in the tapestry of our civilization. The words were polite. The undertone was not. Elias caught Mara's subtle frown. Vera's gaze swept the chamber. For the briefest instant, it paused on him, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even interest, before moving on. The rest of the session was procedural: trade agreements, security patrol schedules, territorial disputes between minor species. The colonial incidents were mentioned only at the day's end, deferred to tomorrow's docket. A deliberate move, giving the Empire a night to prepare counterarguments and pressure swing votes. When the session adjourned, Elias remained seated a moment, watching delegates file out. A shadow fell across him. You're the human ambassador, a voice said, low and edged. He looked up to see Counselor Jovar, a reptilian representative from the Helith Combine. Word of advice, drop this. The Empire's patience is not infinite. Elias rose. Neither is ours. Joe Var's eyes narrowed before he turned away, tail lashing once in irritation. Back in the human delegation's quarters, Mara locked the door behind them. That was a warning. I know. Elias unsealed a slim case and withdrew a crystal data rod, the evidence he'd come to present. Tomorrow, they'll try to discredit this before it reaches the chamber floor. They might even try to stop me from speaking at all. You think they'd risk open intimidation here? I think they've ruled this place long enough to believe no one will stop them. Mara hesitated, then said, You saw her watching you. Elias slid the crystal back into its case. I saw. That night, the view from the quarters overlooked the star itself, Varela Prime, a vast ember suspended in the dark. Its light bled into the metal skin of the throne of stars, bathing it in a glow like molten gold. Elias stood there for a long time, hands clasped behind his back, listening to the muted hum of the station's systems. He thought of Caer Dahiz, of streets reduced to ash, of names carved into memorial walls. His sister's face rose unbidden in his mind, lit by the grainy hollow she'd sent him before the attack. When he finally turned away, it was with the clarity of someone who had already accepted the cost. The next morning would not be a debate. It would be a confrontation. And if the Empire wanted to see what humanity was made of, Elias Kale was prepared to show them. The council chamber buzzed with subdued conversation as Elias entered. The floor's obsidian tiles reflected the shimmer of banners overhead. Delegates clustered in quiet knots, their voices carrying the clipped rhythm of rumor. Mara fell in step beside him. They've been whispering since dawn. Imperial envoys made the rounds early. They're shaping the narrative before I speak, Elias said. We'll cut through it. The Chancellor was already on the dais, her silver robes cascading down the steps like molten light. Vera greeted the chamber with a smile that never reached her eyes. The matter of the so-called colonial tragedy, she began, her tones smooth as polished glass, will now be heard. Elias rose when the speaker recognized him. Esteemed members of the council, he said, voice steady, I bring before you evidence regarding the destruction of the human colony Caer Dahiz. What happened there was not an accident. It was an attack, executed by Varellan warships. A ripple moved through the chamber. Some delegates leaned forward, others leaned back. Vera tilted her head slightly. Ambassador, the Empire mourns the loss of life in your territory. But to suggest we were responsible, such an assertion demands proof. It will have it, Elias said, keying a control on his wrist console. Above the central well, a hologram flared to life, sensor logs from patrol ships, showing Imperial vessels in the Caer Dahiz system. Timestamps, transponder IDs, and trajectory data burned into the margins. Murmurs rose again. Vera's voice was honey and steel. These records are elaborate. Perhaps too elaborate. In this galaxy, falsifying data is child's play. Is it possible, Ambassador, that your people crafted this display to assign blame? It's possible for anyone to lie, Elias said evenly. But lies collapse under scrutiny. You'll find these logs verified by 3 independent systems, none human. The speaker called for a recess before further evidence could be shown. The gavel's strike echoed like a warning shot. In the corridor outside, the air was cooler, quieter. Elias's path was blocked by a tall Varellan aide flanked by 2 Imperial guards. Ambassador Kale, the aide said loudly enough for nearby delegations to hear. It has come to the Council's attention that you accepted unauthorized credits from the Kairos Syndicate prior to this hearing. Gasps from passing envoys. Elias didn't blink. Scan me. The aide hesitated. You've accused me publicly, Elias said, voice carrying. Scan me publicly. A portable analyzer was brought forward. The reading was swift and unambiguous. No illicit transactions, no anomalies. The aide's composure cracked before he turned away, muttering something about clerical error. From the shadows of a side alcove, a Squari delegate stepped forward, lean, black-scaled, eyes sharp with interest. You didn't flinch, they said. I don't intend to, Elias replied. The squarry gave a slow nod. Perhaps humans aren't as breakable as I thought. When the session resumed, Elias stood again in the well. This, he said, producing a slim crystal rod, is the black box recording from the Vigilant Dawn, a defense ship stationed at Cair Dahis. The hologram shifted to the view from the Vigilant Dawn's bridge. Imperial cruisers emerged from jump space, weapons arrays powering. The recording captured the first volleys, the screams over comms, and the captain's final order to evacuate civilians. The image froze on the flash of the cruiser's destruction. The chamber was silent except for the low hum of the projectors. Vera did not look at the images. Tragic, she said softly, but misleading. This Admiral, Ruthvar, acted without sanction. The Empire executed him for his disobedience. We have already avenged your loss, Ambassador. You avenged it, Elias said, by killing your own officer, not by answering to the Council for an unprovoked strike. A murmur of divided opinion swept through the tiers. The Chancellor's eyes met his. Do you believe this Council exists to punish every ill? No. It exists to preserve stability. Your accusations disrupt that stability. Stability without justice is tyranny, Elias replied. The speaker called for order, striking the gavel again. During a second recess, Mara caught up with him near the refreshment alcove. They're wavering, she said quietly. The footage shook them, but Vera's rogue Admiral story is giving them a way out. She's trying to make them believe this isn't systemic, Elias said. If they believe that, they won't act. Then tomorrow, you'll have to give them no room to hide. The final minutes of the day's session were spent on procedural matters. When the speaker announced the vote would be held after closing arguments the next morning, Vera smiled faintly. Ambassador Kale, she said in that measured voice, the floor will be yours at the start of the final session. Choose your words wisely. Elias inclined his head. I intend to. That night, back in the human quarters, the throne of stars lights glimmered beyond the viewport. Mara reviewed possible swing votes, but Elias was silent, his thoughts fixed on the faces in the council chamber, the ones who looked away, the ones who held his gaze, the ones who whispered to each other in the recesses. They didn't need more evidence. They needed to feel the cost. By morning they would. The chamber was hushed when Elias entered. No casual clusters of conversation today, only fixed gazes and taut shoulders. The vote would follow the session. Vera stood at the dais, the light catching the silver threads in her robes. Before we proceed, she said, let me remind the Council of its purpose. We preserve harmony through unity. Disobedience, left unchecked, threatens us all. Some nodded. Others kept their faces unreadable. The speaker gestured. Ambassador Kale, the floor is yours. Elias rose, walking to the central well. His steps echoed in the vast space. He looked up at the tiers of delegates, meeting eyes where he could. When humanity entered this concord, he began, voice steady. We came as learners. We accepted the rules, paid the dues, respected the borders. We believed peace was not the absence of war, but the presence of justice. He paused. Cair Dahis was not an accident. It was not a rogue act. It was the deliberate destruction of a home. I will not bury that truth under polite language. A flicker passed over Vera's face, the smallest narrowing of her eyes. Elias gestured toward the hollow projector. You've seen the recordings. You've heard the Empire's explanation. And you've heard mine. I could stand here and argue over data points, ship IDs, or chain of command documents. But I won't. His voice dropped, drawing the room in. Because for my people, this isn't a matter of charts and logs. It's the last message from a sister who never made it to the shelter. It's children pulled from the rubble of a school. It's the empty space at a dinner table where a father should sit. That is what you are voting on today, whether those lives mean anything in this chamber. A murmur stirred in the tiers. Vera's voice cut across the quiet. Ambassador, your grief is understood. But the Council cannot be swayed by sentiment. We must think of stability. Elias straightened, his tone sharpening. Stability for whom, Chancellor? For those powerful enough to destroy without consequence? Or for those small enough to be told their suffering is inconvenient? The murmur grew louder. Vera's composure remained, but her gaze locked on him. Your people's survival depends on knowing when to yield. Elias met her eyes without flinching. We've learned many things, Chancellor. How to rebuild from rubble. How to bleed and keep moving. But one lesson above all, you attacked our home. The chamber broke into overlapping voices, outrage from Imperial allies, agreement from others. The speaker called for order, striking the gavel until the noise subsided. In the stillness that followed, the Squari delegate rose. The humans speak truth. An attack on one colony, without cause, is an attack on the principles this council claims to uphold. Another delegate, from the Kairos Syndicate, of all factions, stood next. We will support sanctions. One by one, smaller powers began declaring their stance. Not all backed humanity, but enough momentum shifted that imperial control of the narrative faltered. Vera's jaw tightened. She spoke with icy precision. Sanctions will provoke conflict the likes of which none here have seen in centuries. Consider what you invite. The speaker's voice carried over the tension. We will proceed to vote. The results came through the chamber's data lattice, projected in pale blue figures for all to see. The resolution to censure the Empire and impose limited sanctions passed by the slimmest of margins. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the noise swelled, cheers from the delegations that had stood with humanity, hisses from those aligned with the Empire. Vera descended from the dais and stopped in front of Elias. The silver of her robes shimmered like quicksilver under the lights. Enjoy your defiance, she said softly enough for only him to hear. It will not last. Elias replied in the same quiet tone. Neither will your control. After the session, the Squari intercepted him in the corridor. You've made yourself a target. The Empire will not forget this. They already wanted us gone, Elias said. Now they'll have to go through more than just us. The Squari's mouth curled in what might have been the start of a smile. Perhaps the galaxy needed a reminder that humans are interesting. Mara joined them, datapad in hand. 3 new factions sent messages offering talks. That's more support than we've had in years. It's not a shield, Elias said. It's a warning shot. The next one won't be political. The Solace departed under escort from neutral patrol craft, slipping free of the station's shadow. Varela Prime's red light fell away behind them, the throne of stars shrinking to a pinprick. Elias stood at the viewport again, silent. He could still hear the echo of his words in the chamber, still see the Chancellor's eyes narrowing, not from wounded pride, but from calculation. Mara stepped beside him. We bought time. Yes, he said. Time to prepare. He let the silence stretch, the hum of the ship filling the space. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but certain. You started this, he said to the empty dark. We'll finish it.